right, you're listening to Hawke Talk. I'm here today with Oliver Trevena. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Nice to see
you.
you.
You too, and thanks for coming on. So, again, I assume day one, you're in the delivery room, you come out and you immediately started performing, entertaining, and that was it. You were an actor from day one.
That was it. I was dancing in the hospital. No, not quite that way. But I guess the funny thing is there is some truth to it. I think my mum had the idea I would be. So I'm the youngest of four boys. And I think mum, in those days, I'm 43, so we're going back quite a while. You didn't really find out the sex of the child. You just let the child pop out and it was like, what is it? And I think my mum was pretty sure it was going to be a girl. So I came out. Obviously, they like to say they weren't disappointed. But, I ended up doing ballet at 4 years old. So I did ballet for 12 years and was a dancer, coming from a pretty, not the best town in South London. Do you know what I mean? South of London in East Sussex. Yeah. So I say that because my mum says that I chose to do it. I don't really remember 4 years old, but I can't imagine walking down Hastings town centre and seeing any guy doing ballet where I would say I would like to do that. You know what I mean? So I think my mum had some influence, and I'm incredibly grateful for it now because it definitely, paved my way.
What's that movie that's literally a
Billy Elliot?
Yeah.
Jamie lives right down the street. Awesome. The guy who played Billy Elliot. Yeah.
So Billy Elliot childhood. And was that like your mom, so as you said, your mom's doing, what were your brothers like? Were they into the arts at all as well?
So there's a year gap between me and Chris, year and a half, and then there's a 10-year gap. So I have two older brothers, big gap, me and Chris. Chris was a little bit into drama, but he kind of, stopped that at a young age. And my other two brothers worked for my dad's business, which was like a car garage and a small trucking company. So couldn't be less artistic, Although I guess, no disrespect to anyone that fixes cars, there's an art to that.
Everybody's got their own path, but it's fun when you see that, because I think a lot of people assume it's upbringing and it's, this and that. And I mean, in some ways it is, but you can grow up in a family where everybody is very different.
Totally, 100%. And I think that's the crazy thing is, it's my mum's, Irish background, and Irish people are like a walking fridge magnet. They have a quote for everything, even when you don't want a quote, you get hit by a quote. And my mum would always say, life makes sense in reverse. Yep. And I used to think, what does that even mean? And now, you get older and you're like, oh, I kind of get it now. Because I couldn't have even if I just rewind like 5 years, 10 years, 50, I would have never guessed this is what the future held for me. It's really nutty. Yep. So I think you have to, I wasn't brought up in like a Buddhist temple or anything like that. So, but when those things of trust in the universe and trust that it's going to happen the way it will, there is some truth to that.
100%. Totally agree. It's funny. I always like to share. I made fun of marketing majors in college. I was like, marketing, what do you do? Draw pretty pictures. And then here I am with my entire career.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so how was that growing up? I mean, again, you said it obviously wasn't necessarily a common thing, but like, was it similar to Billy Elliot? Were you teased a lot? Were you always...
It couldn't be more similar. It was tough. My dad, I played a high level football as well, which I think saved me in some ways because I still fell into some of the cool circles because I was a football player. But then the same kids would come down to the theater every week and poke fun at me because I was wearing tights and my mum would put lipstick on me and mascara. I mean, literally it was rough. I mean, loads of street fights. I got jumped when I was 18 years old pretty badly. I was pronounced dead on the scene.
Over ballet?
But just a street attack. I definitely stuck out in that town. There wasn't a lot of people that left that town to do anything in the arts. And I was doing a lot of that stuff, and just it was just different. That's the best way of putting it. I don't think it's definitely not a negative when I look back. It was hard because I think as a kid growing up, all you want to do is be liked. It's a common ground for all of us, right? When you're a kid, you want to be liked. I think when you get older, you're like, I don't really care anymore. It's like people that matter don't mind, people that mind don't matter. I'm good. But it's really hard to get to that place. And I think you only get to that place with time. Perspective, I always say like it's tough. You can't teach perspective. You can't read a book. I mean, I remember I used to read every self-help book under the planet. And nothing registered. Life registers. You learn through life. And I think looking back, I mean, it would have been great not to care as much, but all I wanted to do was fit in, and it was really hard to fit in. And I was just always that kid, always that kid that would try and I'd do anything. I'd give away my lunch money to buy friends. I'd looking back, it was so messed up. What was normal to me at that time was such a weird upbringing, but my parents were great and very supportive. And, my mum would spend it was heartbreaking. She'd spend all her money. I remember I get emotional still thinking about those memories of mum would work all week. She used to work in a sandwich bar and she'd get her little checkbook. And I remember the dance teacher would be like, "Hey, Trish, you're behind on his lessons." And I'd see her write that check and hand it over. And I'd be heartbroken. I think that's probably what kept me in it as well, because you don't want to.
I was going to ask, with all that pressure, how did you, even as a kid, when you want acceptance, what made you stay in it? And was it just that commitment to your mom?
Probably caught in conflict between I want my mates to like me, but also I want my mum to love me, so it's like that. And then I did love it. Don't get me wrong. There's a feeling you get on stage performing, a live audience. Clapping that you become addicted to. There's a reason why mental health plays such a big part in the entertainment industry, is because we get addicted to that rush. It's like a drug. It's like, someone telling you you're great. People can say you don't like it, but everyone likes it. It hits. And when you're on a theater stage and people are clapping, you want to do it more. So I think it was a blend of everything. It was like I enjoyed it. It was tough. I had the family stuff. It kept me going for a long time.
And so you get to 18, as you said, you had this, sounds like pretty traumatic situation. And was it that you stood out because you were in the arts and they were just like, we got to beat this guy up, or where did that come from?
I mean, looking back, it's funny because I didn't have any memory from the attack, right? So it was caught on cameras. It was the first punch was on the back of the head. It knocked me out. I hit the ground and they stamped on my face on the curb for, I think, 7 minutes. So I lost I had facial reconstruction from here, metal plates, new teeth, everything. That's why I have a good jawline and good teeth, cost me a lot. But I never remembered everything. And then, to be honest, I did the work, trauma caught up with me. It was the feeling that I was living with that was just everyday fear. I would say my 20s and 30s, what I thought was normal was just living in fear every day. So that would be, and that's because my core belief from that attack, because I never did therapy afterwards, I never did. It's the English way, keep calm and carry on. My core belief was that everything's going to end, so because it did. That day I was leaving in 2 days time to do this, I was in a boy band touring thing, and everything changed. And so ongoing, whether it was a relationship, whether it was a job, whatever it was, if my parents didn't call me back, I thought something had happened. Everything was, the normal reaction to everything was fear. And that became normal, and that wasn't healthy. And then, eventually it's like you either got to figure it out or it's going to take you down. And that's the simplest way of putting it for me. It got to that point where it was really tough. And it's really only the last few years that I started to really get deeper and deeper and deeper and start to figure it out and start to do the work and start to, peel back the onion. And that, for me, memories would come back, I didn't lose my memory, which was told to me at the time, you got severe head injury, you lose your memory. I think it's, someone explained it to me, a doctor once, and he said the simplest way of putting it is humans, to protect themselves, when you have trauma, it goes there and then you layer upon it. And then eventually you get to an age or a place in your life where you don't even know why you feel a certain way. You hear a door slam and it makes you feel that way, but you can't remember the memory of the door slamming because it's so far down now. And so I did a lot of neurofeedback. I did a lot of, I did ketamine IVs. I've done, everything from Landmark to Hoffman, the Hoffman Institute. I tried everything. I've done Iboga, in the mountains, Ibogaine. I've done Bufo. I've literally been like, what can I try to figure this out? And it started to, I don't know any one thing. I think we're all, that's the tough part as well, because people say to me, what was the one thing that you would tell me I should do? And I'm like, I don't know, because I'm not you. What works for one doesn't work for someone else. And I think that's the bit we all forget as well. It's like, just because that person did this course or did that drug or whatever, and they had a breakthrough, don't expect the same. We're all made up of different, chemicals, atoms, cells, whatever you want to think about. And basically I started to uncover these memories, and I had a memory of the attack. And I actually made a comment to the guys. I was leaving and I made a comment to them. Don't get me wrong, the comment didn't deserve me to be beaten into a coma, but I did, aggravate them. I called them basically like they were gym guys, and I made a comment, So it's funny when you start to like peel back the onion, because that's one example of everything in life that I started to see differently. Where it was like relationships that you're like, she was this or that was her fault. And then you start to peel it back and you're like, it wasn't that way. That was my ego. My ego was telling me the way it happened, but it actually happened a totally different way.
When it changes the whole narrative the rest of your life, because you said you're living in fear of like, this could just happen and you just get punched in the back of the head. And you're like, oh, wait, not that again, you deserved it, but that you enticed it in some way, that it took an action it wasn't just.
Of course. Every action gets a reaction, right? So look, it might have still happened. Don't get me wrong. The same guys had put someone else in hospital 2 hours before on a street attack as well. They were on a rampage for no reason. So it might have happened. It might not.
For sure. Yeah.
But the fact is, you can't let go of anything or overcome anything until you actually deal with it, and you can't deal with it until you're honest about what actually happened. And I think our ego and our mind, still to this day, loves to tell me something different than what is actually real. Like we all love it. You get in the car, you drive down the street, you swerve in front of someone, and then 2 minutes later, that person swerves in front of you, and you're like, what the fuck? You don't stop and think, actually, I did that to them first, and you let them pass. It's all a mess in real time. So I think it's that for me in life. I still try and do it in work. I'm obviously in business a lot now, and I try and pause. I'm not perfect. I think that's the other thing. Doesn't matter what we all do. Doesn't matter what courses or anything. We're still human beings. It's progress, not perfection. But it's about having that pause, registering it, taking a moment, and then replying to the email. Or then, try and do it the same in relationships. It's like you're not going to see eye to eye. You live under the same roof with someone, or you're dating someone, or you have this whirlwind romance. There's going to be moments where you get triggered. Just go for a walk. Go for a walk, come back, and you're probably going to express yourself a lot differently than you do in real time. At least for me, anyway.
100%. So, no, it's good. You got to digest. And so after that, like, what was your goal post high school, post 18? Like, where, like, you said you were going to tour with a boy band, but like, tell me more about like what was the plan? How did that change? And then what became?
Yeah, I mean, the plan, I always thought, I loved theater. I went to theater school. I was on stage. I did everything. In England, you kind of have to train in all three. You do music, you do theater, you do dance. You have to be good at all three. Or at least then it was. I think it's changed sometimes now. But literally to qualify, you had to audition in all three for theater schools. So I always loved every part of it. If I'm honest, I thought I was going to be in the world's biggest boy band. I loved pop music. It's crazy to say, but like that's all I would listen to, and I was that guy on stage. I had long blonde highlights. Like it's hilarious. And that's what eventually when I came to America, I got a record deal and I got signed by a guy called Dick Scott. He was the guy that did New Kids on the Block, and a bunch of other successful acts, Diana Ross, Boyz II Men. And I was like, oh my God, I've made it,
Okay, so post that accident, you did get back into the singing and the music side of things.
Literally, when I say post accident, it was a long recovery because they had to fix the jaw before I could have teeth. And so I was on liquidized foods. I had a face like a monster. There was a lot of stuff going on. So it took me a good few years. And then I got a little compensation award from the government because one of the guys was on tag and, shouldn't have really been on the streets. And I got that money, which looking back was nothing because my teeth have genuinely cost me more than that, 10, 20x more. But I got £13,000, which for a theatre kid that was paying, I was getting paid, I think like £50 a week at the time. So I got £13,000. I knew a couple of people in LA and they loved it. And they were like, it's safe, it's amazing, there's so much opportunity. And I had this lump of cash and I was like, great, I'm coming to America. And I never really looked back. It was tough, but I never really looked back. And that's when the music got me here, got me my visa. And then, it was a weird time. It was when everyone was coming out was so young. So I was like 23, but every musician that was getting a deal was 15, 16, 17. And I was like, oh my God, I'm too old. I missed the boat. And so I stopped doing music, and then I fell into like, you know, I'd write here and there, and then I fell into like a TV, you know, hosting gig out of just pure luck.
What happened?
You know?
I'm curious. How did you fall into TV hosting?
I was doing a karaoke, like hosting a karaoke for a nightclub called Villa, which was owned by Leo and all the guys, and they were, you know, the Wolf Pack, they call themselves. I don't know if they do anymore, but at the time they did. And Reza and the guys, the main owners, were like, "Come and host this karaoke." I think because at the time, I probably being British, and it was when Simon Cowell had just come out as like the American Idol, so I think it was a nice niche. And so I would host this karaoke, and it would be hilarious. We'd have like, you know, Kid Rock and Adam Levine would sing, and I'd be on the mic being like, "Yeah, that was shit. You're off," you know. And someone said, "You know, you're good at this. You should do it." And I started working for a company, and that was kind of like thrown into the fire. Really knew nothing other than being me and chatting. You know, I guess I got good at talking because that was my survival technique, right? Talking and humor is what got me through life as a kid. Like, I've taught my way out of it. I'd make people laugh, and then they wouldn't want to beat me up. So, you know, that to me was second nature, and I enjoyed it. And, you know, and then I was in the thick of Hollywood.
Got it. And so you go to TV hosting, like, again, you grew up in the arts. Were you already thinking like acting could be this next thing? Because I missed the boat on.
So I got an acting agent very early on. As soon as the music stopped, I got an acting agent. And then I fell into TV hosting. And the tough part was my agent at the time would always send me like an audition. And then you would see like the dates it was shooting in. It would say like, you know, auditioning, shooting in August 1st to 16th. And I'm like, well, I can't get the time off of the hosting gig, you know? And so it just never worked. And I ended up doing a few guest stars here and there on TV shows just when the timing really worked out. So it was always something I wanted to do.
Note, what's interesting is there's people that work, you know, 20 years to get a guest star spot on a TV show. You had enough in front of you and opportunities that it was actually you were having to turn them down, not seek them out in that same way.
So I wasn't always getting off of the role. I was turning down auditions at the time. And so, it kind of I just got sidetracked and just fell into the hosting circuit. And I loved it because I love people, right? And I think I was always looking at things to be like, oh, I'm grateful to even be in America, you know, like to have this opportunity to be around.
What stuff were you hosting?
I was doing a show called Young Hollywood, like when it first launched. I did a lot of some of Dick Clark stuff. So like the pre-shows for the American Music Awards, the Grammys, the Billboards. Then I did a show for the Hollywood Reporter. So like in studio, it was called In Studio by the Hollywood Reporter. It was an actors series, or actors, directors, and writers. So I'd sit there and interview them. And I think that's when it started to like click for me, was like, you know, you go as a host in that realm. And look, it was always great because I was close to a lot of the people I was interviewing. I knew them. And so I would always turn down any gig that was any kind of news show or gossip show because I just couldn't do that. The shows I always did were very respectful. You know, it was like, we're talking about your craft. That's it. But at the same time, you know, you watch all these movies because that's the way it works. It's like if I'm interviewing, you know, Tom Hanks on a Wednesday, I have to watch his movie at the private screening on the Tuesday to know what I'm going into. And, you know, I'd watch a lot of these movies and I'd be sitting there thinking like, fuck, I could have gone up for that role, you know, like not from a place of ego, just being like, I could have had a shot at that, you know, obviously not Tom Hanks's role. I'm talking about like the smaller supporting role. And I think it just started to get to a point where my mental health wasn't in a good place. I'd started to do a lot in business as well. And with the fashion brand AllSaints.
Yeah, how did that come to be?
They were launching in the US and I got introduced to the owners at the time. And they made me like their ambassador. So I would wear their clothes exclusively. I'd, you know, help them out with things here and there. And I really, you know, I loved fashion and I loved like learning from people. And then there was a guy that ended up purchasing the brand, or acquiring the brand is the right term to use. And him and I just became really close. And he just taught me a lot in business and a lot on like, I knew, or at least I knew a little bit, and I'm always still learning about how to grow a brand in the authentic way around the market and content, right? Because I've been on both sides. And so I love that part of the business. So I started to get really heavily involved in AllSaints like that. Like I created a music series called the LA Sessions, and I'd have like One Republic and Imagine Dragons and all these bands I knew from the very beginning, like day one of their careers. I would have them perform in the store and wear AllSaints, and we'd make these music videos. And so I love that, like tying authentic fans of a brand into doing something that normally you wouldn't see them do unless you were paying them a big check. And that became like my MO. Like, you know, you can't get someone to do something unless they like something. That's it, you know? And so that was a big part of what, like, I started to realize. And I guess I started to like own that a little bit more. Like, oh shit, I'm good at this. Like, I have a lot of connections. I'm good at putting people together. But at the same time, as I said, I was on this hamster wheel of get up, work, go out at night, really pretend. I think that's the other thing about a TV presenter is you're like, hi, oh my God, your new movie. Tell me about it. It was so amazing. And I'd go home and cry. You know, like I was miserable. We're in Hollywood. So like, well, I don't think it's just Hollywood. I think it's now the nature of the world we live in because of social media. And, you know, I'm guilty of it. You see my social media, it's like happy post after happy post after happy
highly real.
So that was and even more so in Hollywood, like, maybe it shifted a little bit, but at the time it was like, no one wants to hear if I'm fucking down. You know, no one wants to, like, people want you to be top of the game and top of the world and, you know, tell everyone how much you're crushing it. And that was what I'd do. You know, I was great at it. I would be like, oh my God, life's amazing. I remember like I would stick like pictures of the beach up on my Instagram that were from actually 3 weeks ago, you know, just so people wouldn't ask me what I was doing, but I was at home on my own, you know? And that, I guess, inauthentic life became very lonely. And then the mental health started to, you know, suffer, and, you know, therapy and things like that weren't the normal for me. It never was. And so long story short, it just all became like a ball of mess, right? Like it was, you know, coming down and, you know, if you don't start climbing out of a hole, you're just going to carry on getting more in the hole. And that was where I was. I was in a hole. And it started, and I realized like I finally found an amazing therapist, and I started to like little by little, you know, it wasn't like, oh, I had one therapy session. I was like, it was, I had to dig, and sometimes digging sucks, you know, sometimes staying in that, as bad and crappy as that dark hole is, sometimes more comfortable than getting out of it. And so it was a process. And look, I was on like, you know, I would drink. I struggled with addiction. I would take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It was like my journey for so long. I would do a course and I would be like, that's it. Oh my God. Oh my God. I would cry. I would be like, life is so amazing. I'm so, and I'd do my gratitude list. 3 days later, boom, I'm back on the floor, you know? And I like to talk about that because that's been my journey, right? Even through addiction and even through other stuff. I was never the guy that was like, I know that alcohol probably isn't serving me anymore and I'm going to give it up. And that day I gave it up and my life has been brilliant. Never the case for me, you know? It's been an ongoing, you know, day by day. Progress, not perfection is, I think, my favorite term, because that's the bit that I think cripples a lot of us, is we expect, just because we had that moment where we took a step forward and we had that enlightening moment, that now it's going to be okay. That is the most dangerous thought there is, because as soon as you have that enlightening moment, you're high, and then when you come down, the low is even worse. And I think the understanding that no one, at least I don't know anyone that's like gives you raw honesty, says that ever since they got well, they're great. You know, it's not, you know, it's not real. And for me, that was never the case. So it was a path of taking steps forward, taking steps back, figuring out what works, figuring out what doesn't, trying different things, trying breath work, trying meditation, doing TM courses, whatever. And then I found things that work for me. That was it.
When what works changes too. That's the other point.
100%.
Last year, this
100%. Totally. And I think the more I started to do things, the more I started to dig up stuff, the more I started to let go of stuff, because it's like it's like there's a, I don't know, and I love like weird analogies. Friends make fun of me, but like, look at it as in food, right? Like the food there's a lot of bad food down there, which are the feelings. And you can't get rid of that food until it comes up and out. And otherwise it's just sitting there. And the more you start digging up, you'll be like, oh shit, there was a fucking hamburger in there from 20 years ago that I didn't even know. And so the more I did that, the more I would start to like myself and be like, oh, this is what this is what waking up feels like. Like I actually wake up without that feeling of, you know, like it was crazy. And it doesn't mean that I now on a random Wednesday, I could have the best week ever. And for some reason on a random Wednesday, I wake up like that. But the difference is now I still have the same reactions at time. I still have the same thoughts at time, but the thought doesn't turn into a thought on top of a thought on top of a thought that then makes me take an action that then I regret. It's also the same mind that will tell me I'm not good enough, no matter how well I'm doing. And it's the same mind that will tell me that things aren't okay, even though they are okay. So it's really like learning how to deal with that initial negative thought, because that initial negative thought will always come in, you know? There's a book called the Chimp Paradox. And I read that years ago, and it's about, I can't remember the guy's name, Chimp Paradox. It's about the training your chimp. It was a sports psychiatrist who used to work with a lot of Olympians. And all of us have a chimp on our shoulder, right? And you're never going to get rid of the chimp, ever. It's about how you talk to the chimp and how you train the chimp is how you deal with it. And that really resonates for me, because it's like, I've always got him, you know, he's always going to be like, you're a little fucker. You know, no one likes you, you know? So it's about training that voice as opposed to expecting it to go away.
And just rewiring your brain. It's a muscle, and it's the more you feed, what you feed is what you get. And so
there you go.
I think the more you feed into it. And
I'm saying stuff that a lot of us have heard a million times. But it's been a big part of that journey. And I think to that point, then I started believing in myself. I was like, I probably could give acting a go now. Like, you know, there'd be people that was like my agents at the time were like, you're nuts. You're 37 years old. How are you going to get into acting now? You're crushing it as a host. Why would you want to leave this? And I got dropped from the agency, you know, like,
wow.
And exactly. And I had to go and find a new agent. And then I found a new agent finally. And the first audition they sent me was a hosting audition. And I remember calling them up being like, what the fuck? And then, you know, you carry on. And I think that's the biggest lesson for me, is that I always say you gotta believe in yourself enough to keep going. You know, persistence is you got to be your own biggest fan. And I don't mean biggest fan in a way of like, I'm the shit ego. I just mean your biggest fan in knowing that if you carry on and you keep, and you treat people well and you carry on, eventually whatever you're going after will come, you know? So that's it. That's persistence. Persistence, I think, whatever career you're in, whether you want to be the biggest car salesman in the world, or you want to, you know, be a marketing guru, or, you know, whatever you want to do, it's persistence. And I think, you know, that's it. And look, there's two lanes in life. I always say this, especially Hollywood. I feel like there is that lane where it just happens, you know, like, oh my God, I was in a coffee shop and this director said, hey, do you want to be in a movie? And it just went, whoosh. Wasn't that path for me. And that's fine. That was my path. So I think, but the more you stay on that path, the more likely you'll have one of those moments.
And so how is, you know, you said, so 5 years ago, you really pivoted to acting. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, a bit longer, like 7 years ago.
7 years ago. Okay.
I'm 43, so like 36. The first movie was a movie called The Rising Hawk.
And I was going to say, no pun intended, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How did that, so first off, how was it when you finally got that role and got your first movie?
It was, you know, they took a gamble on me. I remember I definitely bullshitted my way into it. It was a classic, like, can you ride a horse? I was like, oh my God, yeah. I've been on horses all my life. Never. And there I was in the Ukraine, you know, on a horse the first few days, got thrown off it. Ended up in the hospital, like literally day 3 with a Ukraine doctor, like with a big pin trying to find this. It was literally so odd. Breakdown of, you know, language as well. But it was amazing. It was to date, my favorite place I've ever filmed in my life. The people there are incredible. I love Ukraine so much. And it was meant to be a shorter role than what it ended up being. It was meant to be like I was playing this character, Bohu, and he was meant to come in. He was meant to like be this weird, nutty, you know, warrior guy, which was fine for me to play because I've been playing it all my life. And get killed. And then in the end, he doesn't get killed. And so he stays. So what was meant to be maybe a couple of weeks in the Ukraine ended up being like 2.5 months.
Oh, wow. Got it.
So I absolutely loved it. The cast were incredible. still dear friends with a few of them. And that's not always the case. You film movies, you're close at the time, but you all have separate lives. But with that movie in particular, it definitely was with some amazing people that I got to learn from, like Tommy Flanagan and Robert Patrick and, Poppy Drayton, one of the actresses, still a dear friend. And we just did another movie together, and it was amazing. And it just gave me that buzz, it was like, oh, this is it. This is that same feeling I had when I was a kid. It was like, it's a rush, and that's why I do it. I do it because I love it. I don't look at it, I'm fortunate enough to not have to look at it as a paycheck. I do it because the feeling it gives me, the same as someone else plays pickleball 5 times a day. It's the rush. And it's I've been very fortunate, touch wood, as the Irish in me still fucking got all those little things that I remember. But I love it. I love it. And keep working, which is great.
Yep. And so how did Caliwater come into the picture? I know you ended up building this brand.
Yeah. So I'd invested in a lot, right? So I love investments. I love seeing things grow. I think there's some relation, or at least in my mind, I put it together the same as a movie. You find a product, that's the script. You find the people are the director of the movie. The people that, found the product are really the directors. They're going to tell the story, and they're going to take it from inception to finishing it, So I look at it the same way, and the same way that excites me about a great script is the same thing that excites me about a great product. And so I'd invested in a bit. And then I think the same experience for investing in great products. I realized that if you don't have a great director, if you don't have a great founder, doesn't matter how good the product is, But if you have a great founder, like a great director, and the script isn't that good, you can still crush it as a movie.
Yeah.
So there's so much like there that I understood. And so I started loving it. And I love the health and wellness space. So most of my investments were in health and wellness, things like Next Health and places like that, gym, DOGPOUND. I loved investing in things that I loved being a part of. Like I was a Next Health customer. I was a DOGPOUND client. Like they were things that I genuinely wanted to be a part of anyway. And I think that's important, because then you enjoy the journey anyway, because investments are risky, right? It's crazy risk. So
100%.
So I invested in things, and I learned a lot, like I said, in the way of like how team is everything. Team is everything. Like that is it. That's the biggest struggle we have with our company today is finding people that are as passionate as you, right? And the same as you go on a football field. If you don't have a good team, you ain't winning. Doesn't matter if you're Manchester United, doesn't matter if you're Real Madrid, you're not winning. If your team, and you could have the best team, but if they're not playing well together, you're done. It's the same in business. It's the reason all these things go round and work, the same as a clock goes round and works, And so I love doing that. And then I was like, look, I feel like I've done a lot for other brands. I feel like I've made a lot of money for other people, and learned a lot. And I want to give this a go myself. And so Cali Water, I love health and wellness, and I would get my blood paneling done, and I would get this, that go through all my levels, and my sugar count was like up here. And I'm like, I'm pretty healthy. I like a bit of chocolate here and there, but I'm not smashing ice cream every day. And it was really coconut water, like they're good sugars. Like I can't say coconut water is bad for you, but it's got a lot of sugar. And so I started to delve into like what else is out there, and, found out about prickly pear and the possibility of cactus water in the drink. And, it's half the calories, half the sugar. It's a fully sustainable product because the prickly pear naturally drains its juice, and it's got a ton of health benefits. So I was like, hang on. If coconut water at the time, I think it was like 12, 13 billion a year worldwide, is doing that, and this is sustainable, then the only reason that it's not working is because no one's really done it or done it properly. Right. And you think about Latin America and South America, you go over to Brazil or something, if someone's sick, like literally, if someone's got a tummy ache, have some prickly pear. If someone's got bad skin, prickly pear. If someone's got, if someone's got the flu, prickly pear. Like it's there. And just it hadn't translated. So, got involved in the company, and Vanessa's like, literally like my little sister, or I should say big sister. She looks after me more than I look after her. She's just literally salt of the earth. One of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. You talk about like solid friendship and a person that just loves and is authentic in this world as well, like the world of Hollywood. There is no one like her. And we had never thought about doing a business together. We'd been through life together on the journey of life, of breakups and loss and everything. And this opportunity just came up, and she was all into prickly pear margaritas. She loved them. And then it was like, hang on, this is a health drink, but we know that it works great as a mixer as well. So there's like health and fun. And she's California born. It's Cali Water. So it made more, put her on the face of a product is a lot more chance of people buying it than me.
I think both are going to do all right.
I don't know. It's a scary, it's funny because my mum still to this day will be like, why do you have tattoos? And all that. I'm the only one in the family, like out of brothers, out of nephews, out of nieces, out of uncles, out of aunties, everyone. I'm the only one with tattoos, and I'm covered. And I'm like, Mum, it's simple. I needed to protect myself. I grew up in ballet. I got my first tattoo when I was 15. I was desperately once again trying to be like, don't pick on me, I'm tough. So I just think it worked out well. With Vanessa, we're both really passionate about it. We launched the brand, learned so much. I think I still learn. Our first year was like, once again, it's been a lot about people. We have an incredible team now. We're really excited, and it's been a journey. I mean, there's a reason people say beverage is hard. Yeah, it's because it is. Yeah, it's a really tough category, but we've pushed through. Yeah, and once again,
discipline and sticking with it is really where you win.
Yeah, because there were moments, trust me, when it was like, even before we launched.
It almost never ends until you're not running
never
it
ends. Anymore. Never ends.
I've talked to enough multi-billionaires that they're still like, Elon Musk is crazy, but a good example of like the guy, sold his last company for whatever it was, $350 million, and was almost broke and living on a friend's couch to hoping that SpaceX launch went well. Like when you're a true entrepreneur, you're going to take risks that sometimes you're like, oh, I hope this works.
Totally. But once again, if you believe in it enough, the same as if you believe in yourself, it's got a good chance. It's got a better chance of working. And I think that has been the case with our drink. And it's, we focused on the product. We did not want to be another celebrity brand. That was like, because, our first really, $4 million we raised is all talent. It's all friends. We would send a case of Cali Water to a friend and they'd be like, mate, I want in on this. And so we're a very celebrity heavy brand, but we didn't want to be a gimmick. We were like, remove all the bells and whistles. If you put that, because we know it, because it's actually like one of the biggest successes of our company still is when we put a table outside of a store and we do sampling. And they know nothing about it. There's not major things of Vanessa floated everywhere or this. It's try Cali Water. People try it and they like it. And I think it's great to have the bells and whistles, but you have to have the product. If you want to play the long game, doesn't mean you can't spike, sell, get out, and then it tanks. But we're not playing that game. We're doing a proper business, and that's it. But look, it was crazy hard. It was during COVID. We were trying to make this drink, and I would drive to a co-packer in Camarillo, and I'd beg them to make me 100 cans, which they didn't want to do. Yeah. And they'd say they'd do it, and I'd pay them like, I don't know, I was paying like $100 a can for them to make this drink as samples. Yeah. And then the place would shut down because the forklift truck driver got COVID. It would delay us again. I mean, we were constantly delayed, constantly. Look, if I could go back, I would have done things differently. I would have got a beverage. I would have employed a beverage specialist or a GM before we even launched, and before that. But you learn. You only learn through life, and that's how you then do things again, and you do them better. But it's been a journey, and it's going really well now. It's going incredibly well. We have kids drinks now. We have the cans. The most exciting part for me is still when people try it for the first time. I love taking a 12-pack to a dinner of people that I've never met. Everyone has a favorite flavor. Yeah. It becomes this big debate. Like literally 2 nights ago, it was like, I like ginger and lime. What are you talking about? I love the watermelon. No, mine's pineapple. And it's great. I love it. I love it. It's something new every day. It's a challenge. So
last question for you, because you've had so much.
I've talked a lot. I've talked a lot.
You get to talk for another couple minutes. What is the one piece of advice you either did hear or wish you heard that like kept you going? I mean, the amount of grit you've had in your career and the stuff you've dealt with, like what really helped you get to this point?
I mean, there's a quote that I love. It's always okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end.
Touche.
Yeah. My grandma used to say that a lot, and I think it's always true, right? If you just and that goes back into, I feel like all roads lead to persistence. Like it's the same message underneath it all. You know, it's like if you just carry on going, if you just persist, that is the only difference between someone that makes it and someone that doesn't. Someone that gets their dream and someone that doesn't. Someone that's successful and not successful. That is it. That is the only thing you need to worry about is persistence. Getting up in the morning and going after it. That's it.
Love it, Oliver. Thank you so much for coming on Hawke Talk.
Mate, thanks for having me.